This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you?
Boring. Boring. Boring.
You gotta do it. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember what you're doing. You're in no position to dictate what we're gonna feel.
I call again for immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Welcome once again to Lembit Öpik Live here on Unprecedented TV, where we find the facts, kill the spin and tell it like it is as best we can. And coming up today, we have got some fantastic, hopefully, insights, which you may not have heard anywhere else, mainly about the Ukraine war. Before I go any further, though, please do remember to like and subscribe. Go to our YouTube channel, Unprecedented TV. It's all there for you. And most importantly, there are hundreds of programs for you to review, many of which are really very current. And we make predictions here on the station. You can see how accurate we've been. I like to say we've been pretty accurate so far. That's a bit hubristic, but it's also true. And please follow me at Lembit Öpik on the wonderful X platform, something that I don't want to ban, but Keir Starmer does want to ban because apparently it offends him one way or another. He thinks that you're too stupid to work out fact from fiction. Anyway, let's try and separate the fact from fiction about Ukraine. Where's it gone from the mainstream media? Perhaps it's gone into the naughty corner because Volodymyr Zelensky has been losing. I've been saying that for over a year. Well, it looks like the mainstream media a little bit embarrassed now because it's claimed that Zelensky can win. I haven't thought he could win since the start of this war, and certainly the current circumstances suggest it. But why is the mainstream media no longer discussing it? Now, that's a question I want to ask my guest. That's Warren Thornton, probably the most knowledgeable man I know in terms of military endeavours. Warren, good to see you.
Hello, Lembit. How are you?
Not bad at all. Certainly better than Zelensky's war effort. Big question. Why has it all gone quiet, or comparatively quiet, in the reportage of the war? We get told almost every day that one or two civilians have been killed, which of course is tragic for the civilians, non-combatants and everything. But why isn't there that much coverage anymore?
There's not much coverage anymore because all the rhetoric and the nonsense has been coming out. I mean, Ukraine are losing and losing badly. Kiev is at the moment, as we speak, getting an absolute pasting. Literally, the Russians are basically allowed to hit almost any city they like because, of course, the Ukrainians are saying that they're taking down missiles and everything else, but they're not. People are fleeing the cities because there is no electric, because, of course, the railway infrastructure is getting destroyed as well. And, of course, the Russians are making gains everywhere. And on top of that, Lembit, they do not want people talking about what we thought the Russians would do once everybody was deciding it was a bad idea to negotiate with Russia. Now Russia have moved the goalposts, and the goalposts are quite simply this. They want NATO to go back to the 1991, basically the how NATO was in 1991. So, of course, that means that the entirety of Ukraine now has to be passed to Russia. We brought this on ourselves in the West, of course, and the fact that they've been saying Ukraine have been winning and of course, Russia have been doing something absolutely terrible, and they're losing and they're fighting with shovels and washing machine parts is, of course, utter and complete nonsense. And, of course, we're only going to see more and more of that as we go along. My problem, or the problem that everybody has here, of course, is that this nonsense and rhetoric that they put forward has come back to bite them in the backside, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the damage to the power system. It's really pretty substantial. Russian officials blame Ukraine for power cuts in occupied South. The Russians are saying the Ukrainians did it for themselves. It is an interesting claim. Ukraine war latest UK position of destructive nature, says Russia, but Moscow hails step forward in Europe. Now, we'll talk about the power cuts in a moment, but Vladimir Putin's mouthpiece has spoken positively about European leaders, but singled out the UK for criticism. Britain, meanwhile, has rolled out new energy support for Ukraine as Russia targets its infrastructure. Now, it seems to me that Russia has been very effective at destroying infrastructure. And although if you're the person who's lost a loved one, a non-combatant, it's tragic, the actual civilian death toll, in my view, is surprisingly low, considering they're in the middle of a full-scale war.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's probably a British report. Britain are the only ones now that want to carry on with the war. Friedrich Merz, Macron, Maloney, they're all coming out saying we should talk to the Russians. Of course, this is sort of finally sort of happened after Greenland and after Trump wanting Greenland, and the Oreshnik strike, obviously, that caused huge damage in Lvov. And of course,
Say what an Oreshnik is.
Now, Oreshnik is this wonderful hypersonic weapon that travels at 13,400 kilometers per hour before, of course, detaching, and 6 warheads on their own. Then go 6 warheads come out of the main one, like 6 baby warheads, and flatten everything in sight. Now, of course, they haven't even put the warheads in there because the kinetic energy alone is enough to flatten buildings, to literally to raise them to the ground, which is what happened in Yuzhmash, which is where the original Oreshnik hit. And the reason we know this, first of all, from the satellite photography, but of course the Ukrainians and the West collectively have made a news blackout on both of those strikes, so that you couldn't see the extent of the appalling damage that happened. But of course, various Ukrainian sources, including official ones, have said that the damage was catastrophic.
Yeah, well, here's I think some of the kind of damage that has been done. I'm not sure if it's by an Oreshnik or something else, but there's no doubt that there's a huge and relentless pummeling of Ukraine by Russia, and it doesn't seem to me there's anything much that the Ukrainians can do about it.
No, they can't, because everybody's saying these wonderful weapons. Well, the trouble is these wonderful weapons have around about, if they're taking out drones, they've got around about a 60% efficiency rate. When it comes to taking out hypersonic missiles, I think they've taken out 1 in the whole course of the war. And the problem is, and that was because that one was malfunctioning. They've got nothing to stop the Oreshnik. They've got nothing to stop a Kinzhal. And the new improved Iskander missiles, which are also hypersonic, now have avoidance as well. And their drones as well now have avoidance detectors on there as well. And they also, on some of the latest drones, have the ability to attack anything coming towards them.
Well, it does seem to me that this has turned into a testing ground for new equipment for the Russians, and it's just pummeling the diminishing resources, sadly human as well as armaments of the Ukrainians. But still, it all grinds on. Just a word now. You said that a lot of I've been mentioning a lot of the power has been cut in places. Yes. in Ukraine. 2 killed in mass Russian drone attack on Ukraine, Zelensky says. They're moaning about massive attacks, which are also creating these power cuts. What is the Russian strategy at the moment? Are they actively just trying to kill the energy in Ukraine?
Well, not only are they hitting the energy sector, they're hitting the railways, of course, because that is the only source, or what they considered safe source, Ukraine considered for moving, and the West considered for moving equipment around. Anything that has turned up on the roads in Ukraine has been taken care of very, very swiftly indeed, and not just, shall we say, close to the front. We're talking about strikes in Lvov, strikes very close to the Polish border, but not over the Polish border, I will also stress. And of course, some of the strikes have been absolutely incredible in terms of their pinpoint accuracy. You have to remember that the Russians are launching over 1,000 drones a day. And of course, 2 killed in a mass Russian drone attack. You are going to get casualties, I'm afraid. We still don't know. They'll try and say, of course, that they were civilians, and they might well have been, but they might well have been military as well. But Russia tried to avoid civilian casualties when they can. The same can't be said of the Ukrainians.
Yeah, well, here's another story. 2 killed, dozens wounded in dodge Russian drone attack across Ukraine. More than 200,000 people in the Russian-occupied part of Zaporizhzhia are without power after Ukrainian strike. So apparently, there's also attacks against the Russian-occupied part of Ukraine, which is odd, really. Basically means Ukrainians are bombing their own country, which is odd. It does seem to be rather. Go on.
You're absolutely right, Lembit. It is a very, very strange one, but they don't mind. For them, the Ukrainians are fighting. They're not fighting a war that they can win. They're fighting a dirty war. They always have been ever since we've been helping them. By we, I mean Britain. The USA, of course, know exactly where these missiles are going as well because of the telemetry that's needed to be able to guide these missiles to the place they're going to. So everybody knows full well where the rockets come from, and of course these missiles, when they do make impact or whatever, they started going for civilian areas because, of course, the Russian air defenses have been so good at knocking their missiles out of the air and their drones out of the air that very few of them actually get through to military targets.
And just let's get back to that. Thank you, that article. So, as I understand it, Ukraine is now bombing. I want to really dwell on this for a moment. They're bombing their own country, and presumably these 200,000 people are basically people who were living in Ukraine before the occupation.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the same's happening in Mariupol over the weekend, Lembit. Mariupol, of course, this place where there was a massive battle right at the very start of the conflict. And, of course, the Russians have taken that and moved well beyond it. And as they went well beyond it, the Russians started rebuilding Mariupol. Looks absolutely beautiful now compared to the bomb site, sort of Hiroshima ruin that it was. And, of course, they've gone and bombed not only the power station there, but some of the some of the buildings there as well, which seems an absolutely crazy thing to do. And there are Ukrainians living in there, but the Ukrainians don't see those that want to be with Russia or be on the Russian side because they are Russian speaking. They don't see them. They see them as some sort of subhuman. So they don't really count as far as they're concerned.
So it's just a big mess. This whole thing seems to be. That's just. I suppose the way I look at it is, we've got this surreal world now where Ukraine's bombing its own people in an attempt to liberate them.
Yeah, it is an absolutely crazy thing. As I say, they're not fighting a war that they can win here. What they're fighting is a PR war. So what they'll do is they'll bomb somewhere, they'll do this, do that, and then they will go, oh, but the Russians have done this. And of course, hoping that you'll not take any notice of the fact that they killed over 20,000 civilians in the Donbass alone since the start of the war.
It's a desperate situation. Stay with us. That is Thornton. We'll go back to him in a minute. I just want to remind you, we've got a great series called Tim Scott Uncancelled. He is the Supremo of the Freedom Association, fantastic fellow. He's been here at our studios many times. And he shows you the stories you may not have seen. He buys the papers so you don't have to. That is Tim Scott Uncancelled. We're increasing the frequency with which we're putting his programs out because you like it. Do let us know other shows you'd like. And remember to like and subscribe at Unprecedented TV, which you'll find on YouTube and also on my X feed as well. But you can probably most easily find all of the shows on YouTube. Still with me, Warren Thornton. We're talking about the mysterious decline and fall of coverage of Ukraine. In the past, we were getting tons and tons of coverage saying that Ukraine could win and they just needed more money, but you don't get that so much now, Warren. But what you do get is NATO arguing with itself while Rome burns, so to speak. You've got relentless complications, the screen things going on now. I don't really talk about that now, but this is what seems to be happening. Russia is taking control of Ukrainian settlements one after the other, and there are so many Ukrainians being killed. What's your view at the moment of the actual continuing death toll on the Ukrainian side, and also for the Russian side, for that matter?
Well, at the moment, I mean, when it first started out, it was around about even. Then the Ukrainians slowly started losing more men. It went to 5-1, then 8-1. Currently, over the course of the entire war, around about 14-1 Ukrainians are dying for every Russian. And that, of course, it's only going to get worse because Ukrainians have lost their most effective units, or shall we say their battle-hardened units. And of course, we're talking about conscription and sending troops into Ukraine. Of course, if we do that, very simply, that's NATO by the back door and the Russians will bomb them. The Russians are supremely confident that victory is coming. And the Russians, of course, are just going to do what they do best, which is that slow grinding down until it was described to me by the Russians as Komodo dragon tactics. They take a bite out of you here, a bite out of you there. And then eventually you are so weak that they come in and just tear you to pieces when they're ready to do so. But they'll do so in their own good time.
Yeah, and the pictures are always the same. There's these dark and big mess sort of situations, as far as I can see. You got German Chancellor Friedrich Merz there talking about compromise. You were mentioning that. There's Meloni, somebody I respect, with Macron, who I do not respect. And it looks like, as you said before, they're beginning to talk about doing a deal with Russia. It's been absolutely obvious they have to do a deal with Russia. But this bunch of clowns has failed to recognize that. Trump knows it, the others don't. And Trump pretty much tried to force them into it a while ago. And there's that terrible, terrible failure of a politician next to another failure of a politician. Von der Leyen from Europe there, and Starmer. Totally out of his depth, in my view. Totally and utterly out of his depth. Those people,
Sorry, you're absolutely right. Keir Starmer, of course, is the only one who wants to continue this war. He might have his own personal reasons for doing so. Problem that we have, of course, Macron is not. I wouldn't imagine Macron's going to go. At the moment, he's looking as though Bridget's finished off the job she tried to start on the plane. And of course, we're looking at, we're looking at Merz, who suddenly turned into Joan Rivers. I mean, can we talk? When he was saying nothing of the sort at the time. The only two people who look like they might want to actually, or might actually be accepted, are Meloni, because we know she's quite close to Trump. Meloni might get the job, but the obvious candidate is not the one they're putting forward, which is Alexander Stubb, who has been nothing but vehemently vocal and anti-Russia, so he won't be accepted by them whatsoever. The obvious choice to go and speak to the Russians would be Viktor Orban.
Yes, because he actually gets on with Vladimir Putin. He doesn't like the war. He calls a spade, and he doesn't seem to be overly enamored with the stupidity of the European Union. I bet you he has no respect for Ursula von der Leyen. What do you think?
He's got absolutely none at all. And in fact, it would probably be a good idea if he replaced her as the head of the European Union, because you can bet your bottom dollar that if the Russians do carry out their threat, that when it comes to Ukraine, there's no doubt whatsoever in my mind that Hungary, if Russia turned around and say, would you like that little piece of, to look after your people, would you like this little piece of Ukraine to be added on to Hungary? Hungary will turn around and say yes. The Hungarians are still
get away with that, though.
I don't know whether they would, but I think the Hungarians would turn around and say it's got nothing to do with anybody else. This is a historic claim. I think Orban's probably a bit too smart to go down that road, but the Poles would definitely take back the area that they consider to be theirs, because one, they'd be gaining a bit of ground, and two, it would annoy the Russians. But here's it. I know your thoughts may be completely different, Lembit.
I would annoy the Russians. Hang on. Who are you saying would give them those bits?
Well, maybe Ukraine, if they think that it's going to fall into Russian hands, they might turn around to Poland and say, please come in and occupy this area.
Yeah, I suppose that would be one gambit. Ukraine's completely finished. You weren't very complimentary about Starmer. He was obsessed with getting pictures with Vladimir Zelensky. He did this really weird thing. He said that he had a diary clash, so he couldn't be on a phone call with Zelensky recently. I have to say, I'm just looking at it. Oh, it's so embarrassing. That's so embarrassing.
It is, isn't it?
There's all this huggy stuff. The last thing he should be doing is that, really, given other reasons. Yeah, and Zelensky just always dresses so ridiculously badly for a statesman. There are some certain rules of dress, I think, and a rather conservative suit seems to be one of them. Whereas Zelensky just doesn't look this. But, I don't think this is doing any good for Keir Starmer. I think it just makes him look foolish. He's backing a loser.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, first of all, he's dressed like an undertaker or somebody at a great, at a gothic pop concert. But here's the problem that we also have. Lembit, even the cat's a good judge of character. Every time Zelensky turns up, you see the cat coming out the front door. It is bizarre. It is bizarre that Starmer, of course, has his own problems where we've got, de-notices, and it's all gone very hush-hush about how the Ukrainian male models, I should say, knew where Starmer lived and where his former addresses were and what car he formerly drove. And of course, there's plenty of those to be handed out. And of course, Starmer himself had a meltdown about X with Grok. Of course, he turned around and said that it was all sorts of children's images and everything else. But the crazy thing is, Starmer had a massive meltdown about that, but didn't seem too worried about the children's rights when it came to having an inquiry into the grooming gang. So he looks more and more stupid with every passing day. And of course, it's only going to get worse, Lembit.
Yeah, he just doesn't look credible. It's just, there's nothing about him which is in any way attractive, to be honest with you. And there's other people snapping at his heels for the job. So putting all that together then, Warren, where do we stand? What's going to happen in Ukraine? The killing will continue, I suppose?
Okay, so by August of 2026, Ukraine will not be in a position to properly defend itself anymore. Therefore, it will have to give all the land up all the way to the Dnieper River, which includes Zaporizhia, Dnipro, and then they're probably, by then, they're only able to defend Kiev and areas west of that. So Ukraine becomes a rump state, and eventually Odessa will fall into Russian hands. And either they make a deal then, which is going to be very, very harsh indeed, or, of course, Russia will take the rest of Ukraine, unless the Americans stop messing about.
Yeah, I would imagine that militarily they could take the rest of Ukraine, but it's going to be quite costly in terms of lives and money.
Yes.
And I'm sure that's one of the reasons they might not be so keen to do it.
Yeah, I think that with the current way that Europe have been behaving, and of course the way that the Ukrainian regime have been behaving, let's not forget there are three main things here. No Ukraine in NATO. Well, if they own all of Ukraine, that's a moot point. Denazification of Ukraine, they could get on with that. And the demilitarization of Ukraine, well, if they occupy it, they can say what weapons go in it. So they might take all of Ukraine just to use it as a buffer zone, Lembit.
Well, that's what a lot of this war is about. The lies told to the former Soviet Union around 1990, not 1 inch to the east. And as you said before, Russia seems to be toughening it up its demands now on the basis that it wants to say, okay, you're playing hardball. We want to go back to what not 1 inch to the east actually looks like.
Yeah, absolutely that. And the thing is, they know full well that the West will reject that. But you have to remember that Russia have had peace deal after peace deal, so-called peace deal, thrust under their noses, where they want a ceasefire so that they can rebuild the weapons in Ukraine, or they can do this, that, and the other. And the Russians have said, no, you haven't been listening to anything we've said over the last 2.5 years. Our position has been utterly consistent. Three main things: no Ukraine in NATO, denazification, demilitarization. For the latest peace plan they put forward, let's be honest here, Zelensky has just been moved up into, Zelensky has moved back home, and of course Budanov, who is a confirmed, shall we say, neo-nationalist, has been moved up in the corridors of
you
power.
need to say who these people are. Who are these people?
Okay, so Zelensky is the person who was in charge of the military, then left to go to London to be the ambassador, or the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK, and he's now going back and is the hot tip to take over from Vladimir Zelensky. And of course, Budanov, who was the head of the SBU, which is the Ukrainian Secret Service, is now right next to, shall we say, Zelensky in the presidential office. So, if anything, the neo-nationalist group or neo-Nazis the position has become harder. They've turned around and said they want 800,000 men in the army. That's not demilitarization. When the war first started, there was 80,000 in the army. And of course, they keep saying that Ukraine can self-determine going into NATO. So the position hasn't changed whatsoever, Lembit, of none of the three things that Russia wanted at the start of the SMO are being met. So they'll keep going until they are.
Use strong words there about neo-Nazis and so on. I saw Lisa Nandy recently talking about, it's more suggesting that Nigel Farage is a fascist. I'm always a bit cautious about that kind of language, but I do think that when it comes to Ukraine, there's quite clear evidence that Ukraine bombed its own people before this conflict started.
Yes, it did. In 2014, Lembit, you remember there is actually a video of Vladimir Zelensky talking to an Azov, which is a neo-Nazi battalion commander, saying, Dennis, stop bombing, people are noticing. And this was in 2019. And of course, this battalion commander turned around and said, well, you're not my president. I didn't vote for you. Have you read the email about what we want? So he was trying to negotiate with Zelensky as to why they should stop bombing and killing people in the Donbass, because people in the West were beginning to notice.
Crazy situation. So, final question. I touched on it before, but explicitly then, next couple of months, any chance of peace talks? Do you think that Europe, which clearly doesn't have a clue what it's doing anyway, is likely to start giving in?
No, there's no peace deal until the situation becomes absolutely desperate, which isn't going to happen. When the situation will be utterly desperate in August, Lembit, and don't expect any peace deal over the next couple of months, because the Americans are not taking it seriously. They sent Witkoff and they sent, of course, Kushner to do a sort of like a Price is Right mineral land grab, if you'll just kindly pack it in. The Russians are not listening to that nonsense at all.
Yeah, and meanwhile, these three, the three amigos, seem obsessed in their own little worlds. If those three were on my side, I'd surrender.
Yes.
It's a terrible bunch.
Somebody called the three of them Dumb and Dumber and Dumbest.
Yeah, I'll leave it for you to decide who's who. Thanks very much indeed. Where can people get another dose of Warren Thornton?
You can find us at warrenthornton.com on Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And of course on Sunday nights between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. with the wonderful Lembit Öpik from Unprecedented TV.
Well, thank you so much. That is Warren Thornton. And also, of course, we do have an opt-in for Warren Thornton's show, half of it. You have to get the rest at his place. Normally around 11 on a weekday. Varies a little bit according to our scheduling. But do please have a look. My own opinion is that after all the bravado and absolutely nonsensical idiocy from 4th Division politicians, including Keir Starmer, the turkeys are coming home to roost, and everything that Warren's been saying and I've been saying is coming to pass. The tragic loss of life, only to buy more defeat and to waste more money as the Russians advance in a difficult and chaotic but undeniable way. The only thing that can solve this problem is doing a deal with Russia. Whatever that deal looks like, we could discuss on another occasion, But if it's going to be a military solution, then Russia will get what it wants. The other observation, as Warren Thornton pointed out, is this. Unsurprisingly, Russia now seems to be hardening its position. It's fed up with this shenanigans with European jokers who don't have a clue about military history and have even less understanding about what this war is about. As a result, they said, okay, then, we gave you 3 demands. Now we're going to say, let's go the whole hog. Let's go right back to 1991, the original borders of NATO, because that's what you promised, and that's what we want. Well, maybe that's negotiable, maybe it's not. But the other 3 conditions, the denazification of Ukraine, no substantial military power in Ukraine, and no NATO membership of Ukraine, I'm pretty sure there's very little room for maneuver there. And as this goes on, Russia is simply proving that it's costly to them, even worse for Ukraine, but they can achieve their goals militarily, as Vladimir Putin said. It's time for peace, folks. You can't win wars, Europeans, and Mark Rutte, NATO, doesn't seem to have a clue either, I'm sorry to say. And I say that sadly because I used to respect NATO. Let's get to peace. That's what we need now. And do please, if you are interested in this subject, let us know your views as well. You'll find that in the chat. But go to Unprecedented TV. Please like and subscribe on YouTube and follow me on X at Lembit Öpik. I'm Lembit Öpik. That was Lembit Öpik Live on Unprecedented TV.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages.